What's up, Tweener? Welcome back to another Tweener Tennis video today here on the channel. And today we have a very exciting interview for you guys today. Today we are going behind the scenes with one of the luxury brands of tennis, the Rolex of tennis brands, I should say. We're talking to Siebert from Uomo Sport, who was the founder of this company, and we're very excited to bring this interview to you because we want to talk about how he got into the space, what it's like creating a luxury brand, how does that compare to other brands on tour, such as Hugo Boss and all the other brands like those. So it was really cool to kind of see what his vision is like, what it's like to create a brand of this caliber, to have this brand be in partner with Jensen Brooksby, Donna Vekic, in Pepperdine's men's tennis team. Like, these are really cool collaborations that they have, and being a luxury brand, it was really cool to see what goes behind the scenes and what it's like to create a brand like this. Now, Steven was very gracious enough to join us for today's interview, and if you want to check out Uomo Sport, make sure to check out the link in the description. But before you guys enjoy this interview, make sure you guys are subscribed to Tweener Head Tennis. We're trying to hit 6,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we'd love to have you guys join the channel. So make sure you're subscribed, leave a like, and make sure your notifications are turned on. And now, without further ado, enjoy our interview with Uomo Sport founder Steven Siebert. Steven, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, for people that don't know Steven has created one of the most up-and-coming, fashion-forward, cultural-based brands in tennis right now that a lot of people need to know about and probably do know about. And if you don't know what the brand is, please look at his table. He put on a full display for us to see. But Steven, you're one of a kind, and I'm very glad to have you on the channel today.
It's a thrill to be here, and thank you for writing the nice piece and mentioning the brand, talking about some of the colleges and some of the top D1 teams and what they're wearing. Yeah, that was kind of our introduction to each other, and I really appreciate going out of your way and doing that, and saying some nice things about the brand. It means a lot, especially supporting these college kids and coming up and hopefully, creating some style around the sport. It's a bold move to start a brand, but these brands have been around a very, very long time. It's a pretty bold move, but it started out in a very organic way. So we'll get into that. I'm just thrilled to be here and talking to you, and I love doing these podcasts. For me, they're a lot of fun. I hopefully don't talk too much or get too nervous. But
that's the point of a podcast.
I do enjoy doing them. I do enjoy doing them. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure, and it's always fun to hear where everything starts and kind of the origin story of where things started in tennis. And for you, I've read online that this whole idea started from you trying to dress or provide better style clothing to your son's high school team. Is that correct?
Really how it started. It started out when basically, we'll get to that. But when I was a kid, I was really kind of into sports, really into basketball growing up. And, the Knicks and Walt Frazier and Pete Maravich and, so many of those really cool athletes that had a lot of style as well. And then one summer I ended up kind of not too far from you in Chester, Connecticut, at a place called the Tennis Academy. And really, honestly, before that, tennis clothing, I wasn't really thinking tennis by any means, but I had to have the Taquini tracksuit, which was so chic and cool and beautiful, and I wish I still had it today. And I had a Fila shirt, and it was just beautifully made in Biella, Italy. And then tennis was just not on my mind at all, but I had to wear that clothing because I just thought it was the most stylish, coolest stuff out there. So one summer I was in Chester, Connecticut with my brother at a tennis academy called New England Tennis Academy, because it's still there. It was an all-white clothing academy. I wasn't really that crazy about being there because why aren't I playing basketball this summer when I'm really playing tennis? And anyhow, so the cool thing about it was that somehow my brother and my parents worked out some business thing with the camp or some barter thing or something. But the beauty is they gave us passes to the clubhouse at the U.S. Open, Park Stilts. And my brother and I were there, and Ash, Nastasi, Stan Smith, Rod Laver, all the iconic cool players were there. And these guys, for me, basketball was very cool. But then all of a sudden, I started to kind of shift into tennis, the way these guys carried themselves, and their personality and their style. And, I didn't really ever get to meet Arthur Ashe. I did get to meet Rod Laver, Stan Smith many times. And I think Newcomb was there. But, kind of, whatever they say about meeting your idols. But what I just remember about these guys is that they just walked in a room. They had so much charisma. They had so much style. I think those guys, they put people in seats for a reason. They were just the way they walked on court, how cool they were, the way they their hair, their clothing, their personality, their charisma, their attitude. They had it. I'm not so sure we see that much of that today. I'm really hoping that, we see more personality and more charisma in the sport. I think clothing was part of it. So anyhow, I kind of forgot about all that for a number of years. Started kind of working in the entertainment business, and then my son started playing tennis at a very young age. I have two sons, one Jack and one Henry. One's an art. He played tennis, and then the other one, he's an art advisor, art curator, really talented, very creative, and very fashionable. And my younger son, who was more the tennis player of the two, played on the high school team. And I guess when he was very young, took him around playing tournaments, and it's kind of fun being around him and having him work with the coach, and really had beautiful style. Just watching him for me and watching his form and his style was just, for my wife and I, was really cool, beautiful thing. So then I kind of, he joined the team, and I kind of got behind the players and the kids on the team, and took the team to IMG to train to see what competition was like. But before that, I looked around for tennis clothing for the team. I said, wow, what happened to tennis clothing? It was phenomenal. It looked like a Richard Simmons dance class. It wasn't even tennis.
Please subscribe. Thanks.
Clothing anymore. And I think it was just kind of blended into more active wear. And I see a lot of tennis players now kind of still wearing very much active wear. And I think these brands that these tennis players don't really understand is that a lot of them are wearing kind of running clothing. And they really, these brands that are in hard goods or in shoes, they haven't really thought that much about tennis clothing. In my real deep, honest opinion, like, the clothing should be as good as the rackets. It should be as good as the strings. It should be, coordinated with the rackets. It should be a lot of things. It's just not. So I looked around, and it's kind of started out as a joke. I just said, wow, how am I going to find tennis clothing for his team? Like, this isn't good. This is bad. And so basically I met a woman who designed for some brands, and I said, here's some drawings. It's kind of what I'm thinking about. How would I actually go about this? Definitely trial and error. Ended up with a small factory that was called Better Team USA, that they were Italians. They didn't really have the right machines, to do what I wanted to do. And then I find out that I'd go to China, try and do it in China. And I think that was difficult and complex. And I know China, you've got to make, huge amounts of items to kind of start something. So I actually went on my own to Italy and worked with this factory called Uno and spent some time there working on all the patterns, all the designs. And it took a long time, and then met the factories that provided the fabrics. Then what ended up happening was, a little time after that factory ended up closing down. And I tried to find another factory in Italy, and it became very complicated. But I found amazing fabrics and went in the factory who makes the most technical fabrics that most of these brands would never use, because they are so advanced and they are expensive and very expensive. Obviously, they knock off these fabrics, they try and do it cheap, and they cut corners. And I always thought there was room for a luxury brand, for something that was next level, something that was quality. I think things that, I tell people to, buy things that are going to last longer, that are going to go out of style, that you could just have. Like, if I had that Tahiti tracksuit now, it would still be great. It would still hold up. If I had that Fila shirt made in Italy, it would still be phenomenal. If you take care of things, and, they last, quality things. If you look at any, people that are really into fashion, they take out, some of their old suits, Yves Saint Laurent, or some of their very cool suits in the
Mm-hmm.
day, and they're still amazing, and they've never gone out of style.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was all about kind of trying to create something timeless. So I ended up, really figuring out a great factory that a friend of mine put me in touch with
Mm-hmm.
that was in California, not too far from me in Orange County. And they were working with amazing brands.
Mm-hmm.
So then that factory ended up changing, and one of the guys from the factory ended up working with me and kind of breaking off on his own and kind of helping me and doing a lot of our production.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we bring in all the fabrics from Italy, everything, all the trims,
Wow.
all the colors, all the buttons. And I think probably a good thing right now is to say, yes, it is made in California, made in the US, very kind of California inspired.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really kind of what we do. And I'm trying to, so I'm in regular touch. It's complicated, ordering a collar, making a certain color, it's like the cockpit of a Ferrari. Like, where are we going? We're in the cockpit of Ferrari and
Yeah.
figure out where we're going. So that's pretty much the nucleus of the brand is really kind of tennis. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
The Boss grew out of tennis. Fred Perry grew out of tennis. There's so many brands that I've just been so enamored with. And, just trying to stay the course and trying to provide clothing. And there's just a lot of different interesting areas of a brand.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk about, clubs, resorts,
Mm-hmm.
tournaments. I love Tennis Warehouse. They're great to work with.
Mm-hmm.
We got to kind of get our stuff back going with them again. There's a lot of avenues to really, with this brand. Online obviously is the model, but there's
Yeah.
a lot of things to go beyond tennis. I think padel for us is probably a little bit more interesting than pickleball. It seems like it's a little bit more. Tennis is such an athletic sport. Padel is also such a high level athleticism sport.
High intensity.
It's high intensity sport. So pickleball. There's a reason for pickleball, and it's doing great. But I don't know if that's really our space. So tennis will always be our nucleus, and I obviously want to grow into fashion and lifestyle, and
Mm-hmm.
I think there are pieces you can wear out and about. The good thing is,
Absolutely.
Uomo, you wear it when you train, you wear it when you compete, you wear it to the club, to the cafe.
Mm-hmm.
Guys wear it for golf. You see it, and listen, I'd like to be making stuff for mega yachts. I'd love to be making their hats and their polos and their stuff. And I just think if you make things well, yes, you have to pay a little bit more. We're trying to keep things in the tennis space where it's still affordable, but we can still produce the goods. When we sell stuff wholesale to clubs,
Mm-hmm.
it's very tough. There's very little margin. But we think these are really important clubs. We're in some phenomenal clubs all over, mostly all over the US, but
Mm-hmm.
some resorts and some clubs that are just, I can't even believe that we're actually in these clubs. They're so beautiful. I mean, if you see some of these clubs, mostly a lot of them are outside of California, but some of these clubs in the Hamptons, some of these clubs in Connecticut, some of these clubs in Philadelphia,
Yeah.
some of these Eastern clubs are just beautiful, beautiful places to be. So yeah,
It's a very kind of upward scale, and that's kind of what tennis is really known for. And I think it's hard for some people to relate to that in some way, because while tennis is still a very country club-esque sport, we're still trying to make it as fun and as creative as possible. And I think that's what you're doing with Uomo, and doing that with the different colors, doing that with different athletes, doing it Donna Sport with Donna Vekic, which we'll probably get to as well. Like, that was honestly, by the way, that was the best marketing thing I've ever seen in my life, to get Donna Vekic to do Donna Sport. That was unbelievable. I thought that literally fit like a glove with the same names. And I actually wanted to ask you, with that fashion portion of it, with all these nowadays, with basketball players, with soccer athletes that have these pre-match rituals or routines and these like fashion outfits that they wear, what do you think Uomo Sport incorporates with their own style to athletes that wear it off the court?
Yeah, I think off the court, listen, tracksuits have always been from the 70s, super stylish, super cool. I think that, we're making a black on black tracksuit, kind of a little bit like this right here with the pant, and the players, you're going to have the players' initials on it, black zipper. It's very much like there's detail to it. Really have to see the fabric, but the stripes and just the fabric and the fit. The fit is very, it's very European, very cut. It's not baggy, it's not a box, it's not loose. It's really made very, like how Tom Ford makes a suit. We like to look at our pieces that fit the way they should fit your body. It looks like it's tailor made for your body. So I think, I think our pullovers, our Navigari pullovers are really cool. Like the first day at Indian Wells, they said bring 50 Navy polos that we made and 50 and other two different weight polos. I think we sold them out in one day. They were so in demand. And so I think, lifestyle, wearing a chic polo, wearing some very cool workout stuff that's, stylish on and off the court, when you're going to the gym or you're going for a hike or you're going for it's the everyday stuff. I mean, basically, it's kind of, thinking about it, it's kind of a refined, timeless look. We want people to look great and not overthink it. We think that the stuff is just very universal. The colors and what you wear. I think the polos, the Henleys, the techno the techno crews, they're just cool and they're sporty and they're athletic and they're chic. And it's like, for me growing up, like I always took notice of women that wore these 70s very fashionable, sporty Alaya dresses. Like everything is so right now with obviously Lululemon, with the the woman's legging became so popular and it became everything. I think that was kind of a trend, and I'll probably be wearing that for a long time. But I always wanted to make a really sporty, chic women's kind of Alaya type of sporty dress. You can really see the athleticism of someone, whether they're playing it or wearing it. I think it could almost be something like, for us, I took a kind of a Ralph Lauren polo or a Fred Perry polo, and instead of a cotton PK polo, I turned it into a technical four-way stretch polo. That was athletic, but it still served the same way as wearing that polo. So I wouldn't know why you'd want to wear something where you really get all the sweat stains from wearing cotton under you, where you can avoid that by wearing a sustainable, hybrid, technical, PK, lightweight, featherweight. It just feels like you're not wearing anything. So I think when listen, your body is your temple. And for me, a lot of people have very sensitive skin. So, if you buy something that's really inferior and really cheaply made or knockoff of a bad fabric, you kind of get what you pay for. So you end up buying something 3-4 times and you end up with irritating your skin, and your skin's sensitive. You've got to watch yourself in the sun. You've got to watch your body so you don't break out. And I think that your body is your temple, your style is your trademark. So what you wear should be important, because obviously your eyewear is important. The shoes you wear on your feet are important, but what you wear on your body and when you cover your arms and your feet, your body, and it's just, you should wear quality, great fabrics that are not going to, cause problems for you and protect you in the sun. All of our stuff is 50 plus, the highest PVF sun protection. It's all sustainable. So yeah, we don't, these places are making stuff that's $4 or $5. We have some fabrics that are, $15 and up in just the fabric, and that's not even getting it to the US.
Jeez.
So, we'll spend on a short. I mean, it's just our collar alone and our collar and our placket cost more than I'm sure these, the big brands that I won't mention their names, that they spend on an entire article.
Yeah.
Because that collar is just incredibly well made. Here's a little bit about actually one of our polos. But yeah, the collar and the placket, it has to lay right. It has to complement the PK fabric. So it's very complex dealing with doing that. But yeah, our Henley collar, our collar, we have a separate collar factory in Italy that just makes our placket and our collar. And I wouldn't go anyplace else, as much as it's very difficult to communicate with them and get some of the things we want. But it's just unbelievable. I mean, it's incredible the way it lays, the way it feels, and how the plaque and the collar are one piece, and how it blends in with our other fabrics. So and you don't, when you're making things, you don't want to overpower something with the wrong collar or the wrong thing. It all has to kind of, work together and become something that's iconic and stylish. We model everything after architecture, kind of mid-century architecture, like this place here that I mean, or like old vintage Porsches and just things that like Ferrari Dino and 911 Porsche. These things are so iconic. You look at them, it's like, wow, that's art. And I want our clothing to almost feel like it's art. So yeah, and we want the right people obviously wearing the clothing. And I think we're fortunate. I mean, when I look over at Indian Wells, I see, Bill Gates. We dress the Executive Tennis Academy, and Bill Gates is wearing one of our hats because he probably doesn't want to have some big advertisement. Our stuff is understated. It's low key. It's it's for people that don't want a big logo, staring you in the face, but still knowing kind of what it is. But
exactly.
Yeah.
Just like any other fashion brand, if you recognize the colors alone, like Tom Ford or a Gucci or a Prada, the symbols and what it represents with what you're wearing. It's supposed to be subtle, and that's kind of what fashion is. And with that being said too, how do you find the difference, or how difficult is it to maintain the fashion portion of your brand or clothing while still having that sports aspect for it to be usable in on the court and off the court? Is it tough to differentiate or find the right product for you to have for each piece of clothing or pant or hat?
No, listen, it's an excellent question. Obviously, we're always trying to, follow the colors, the styles of what's coming out in 2 years from now. But obviously, like Rolex, we're trying to be the Rolex of tennis. Really kind of, obviously we'd love our people to be wearing a Rolex watch and, wearing Uomo with a Rolex watch. We think that's really kind of the style of, Paul Newman and Robert Redford and, all those racing drivers that wear the Daytona or wear this Hulk watch that I'm wearing here. It's just, I think, we create a lot of staple pieces. So, we'll change colors. Like this year, we're doing a very kind of Bermuda pink polo that's coming out, very much like the very subtle, the sands of Bermuda with a white short. That's never going to go out of style. That's a very cool, very summery, very cool look when you're in the south of France and it's, it's very hot and it's, in many places, like that's a great color to be wearing on you because when you wear a darker color, it's going to make you feel hot. So we always are thinking of, the right different colors of, the different shades of blue that we like, the different, we do a lot with like oak coloring mixed in, with our other colors, but we're not going to go too far off with bright, crazy colors. It's not really who we are. It's, we're really trying to, I guess what you would say is that, we're designing for movement, energy, and intention, and very much everything's with a nod to the 70s.
Okay.
So everything
I like that.
we do has that retro, vintage, classic look. Like everything we thought about what's going to help someone when the weather's hot. We designed I think it was genius that I saw it years ago, but I haven't seen it since. We put a microfiber terry cloth pocket in the short. So when you actually put your hand in the pocket, it actually dries the sweat off your hand, off your fingers, and you put it all in your pocket.
That's amazing.
So the wristbands, the wristband, we made these incredible premium wristbands that are really, I think, we made them for tennis players. Like we made ones that were a little bit smaller. This is really better for the tennis player. So we made these premium wristbands that, really have a great profile to them, and they are sort of lightweight fabric, minimizes discomfort. Material helps keep you dry and comfortable. It's very premium. We made a British racing green, a white, a navy, a blue, very staple colors. So we thought about that. So our mesh and microfiber in the pocket together really is it's all very performance driven. It's not made just to look good or cut a corner. That's not going to help a player. We want to do everything. Like the rackets, how someone strings their racket, the tension of their racket. You know, some of the great stringers in the world, like, you know, people go to Westwood Sporting Goods, they'll go to Ferguson. It's just to go to some of the specialized people. We want people, those people that are really into details, to come to Uomo for a certain reason. You know, because we want the stuff to be very, very technical. We want it to fit you. You know, we want it to complement your racket, to complement your string, complement your shoes. We don't do a shoe. You know, if we did a shoe, I would do something very cool like this new shoe that Diodori just came out with, but I'd love to figure out some way of doing some collaboration. I like that brand a lot. I think Diodori is a very cool brand, Italian. Yeah, we're open. You know, like we'd like to work with some other, you know, I'd say other Italian brands, you know, bag brands. You know, we have a really talented, brilliant guy that I've been trying to work with for a number of years. I think we actually are going to come together and start working together. And what we're trying to do together, and he created, you know, like the Supreme Louis Vuitton bag. He created he worked on the Yeezy shoe. He's a genius. So we want to create sort of a Uomo co-op. What is a Uomo co-op? So it'd be kind of, you know, that's why the coaches and the physio and the nutrition people kind of are important. That's how we kind of see the puzzle. So when we have these style lounges,
Please subscribe. Thanks.
the brands that we associate with, showing the brands that we align with, the company you keep, you know, people will see Uomo in good company. So that's something we want to do. We want to do that. You know, we want to do one in New York, you know, for the US Open, where the coach comes in, talks about coaching on the women's tour, coaching on the men's tour, you know, what it's like when they were playing, what it's like today, you know, nutrition, you know, if you want to go out, whether you're, you know, a recreational tennis player or you're a high level tennis player, you're a college tennis player, what does it take, you know, to injuries, prevent injuries and to play year round, all the different surfaces, all the different time zones. So when we think about the clothing, we think about the time zones, we think about, you know, we think about the weather, we follow the tour with the clothing. Like what are the players going to wear in the clay court season? What are they going to wear during Roland Garros? We created this British Racing Green, which I think looks amazing on clay. We did a monochromatic clay color short, which is very cool. You know, Wimbledon obviously is our favorite because all the brands, you know, are keeping it, you know, keeping it all white, which I think is good, opposed to trying to make some big statement and trying to stand out. I think you stand out by quality, by the way things fit, the way things look on people, not about wild colors or wearing, you know, honestly, we had a player who it was not good for the brand who started wearing cutoffs. And it's like, that's just, you're off brand for us. So if you want to wear your cutoffs, go wear cutoffs, but it just doesn't, it's not a good fit for us. Like someone's not going to walk into a Tom Ford store and say, I want a Tom Ford suit and walk in with cutoffs, you know?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, it's really important. I mean, obviously Roger, you know, the way he carried himself, the way Novak carries himself, you know, these guys have great style and off court, on court, and they know, they figured it out. Obviously they've been successful. When you are successful, you learn a little bit more about style. You know, I think as you become successful, you know, you learn about, you know, how to, you know, how your media training is. I think a lot of players will go out to do speeches, and I think it's up to their agents, because some of these players are going to look back and say, wow, you know, my speech, is that really what I wanted to get across? And I think all these things about being a professional, you know, looking professional, quality, you know, quality is everything. You know, how to dress, how to look like you're a quality person, you dress in a quality style, how you speak about yourself, how you speak about the sport. You know, it's not like, you know, I think it's important. I think it's important that quality and the person you are, that you carry it, you know, through the generations. And for me to see, you know, my son and see these kids, the way they grew up in the world, and, you know, how close of friends they are with each other. I think tennis is such a great bond for so many things. And it's just what you're doing, what I'm doing. It's really, honestly, there's nothing better. There's not a better bond than anything. And, you know, you're going to meet the most interesting people. A tennis racket, you always meet someone interesting. Yeah, it's great to play with a family member, but you pick up someone new, you hit some balls with, you have a conversation. it's just interesting
Yeah.
for me. It's like I always try to go to a place that has a court, and yeah, it just keeps you in shape. It keeps your mind clear. You live longer by playing tennis. I'm sure of it. You stay fit.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's just all these things. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting era right now. I think I think it's very, players that for me, I kind of put a little list together of the 23 and under players,
Hmm.
and because I think as these guys get to be 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 30 and above, we have some amazing players right now that have been doing so well.
Yeah.
And they're honestly, I have a group of players from 18 to 23, and they're unbelievable. They're unbelievable to think about,
Yeah.
Sinner and Alcaraz and Draper and Massetti and Holger-Rune and Arthur Fies and Shelton and Mensick and Lehechka is unbelievable. These Italians, Cavalli and Nardi. And I
Yeah.
love this young American, Emilio Nava. I think he's going to really come up. And, Fonseca, what he's going to bring. And
Hmm.
obviously, we want American tennis to do well.
Yeah.
So I think, the colleges, kids are coming out of colleges. We're getting behind and supporting kids with colleges. We have an
Hmm.
18-year-old player. I can't say who she is yet, but she's going to be a major player, and she's really
Okay.
she's a 18-year-old player. You hear a lot about her. I just can't say much right
That's
now,
fine.
but
I like it. I like that. And along those lines too, when we think about brands, let's take Hugo Boss, for example. Let's take a brand that's already in tennis right now that kind of announced itself with Berrettini first, and now Taylor Fritz, a bigger name than Berrettini, and Hugo Boss doing collabs with Asics to kind of bring their own shoe onto the market with them. What makes Hugo Boss different from Uomo in the sense of fashion in tennis?
all right. So Hugo Boss has been around, and they're obviously all over the place.
Hmm.
They are they are an affordable. They're an affordable brand. I know Hugo Boss from suits and casual stuff.
Hmm.
I can see why they wanted to. I think people right now are not wearing some of that dressy clothing anymore. I think these brands are having a very hard time. People
Hmm.
aren't dressing that way anymore. They're dressing more sporty. And I think it made sense for them to get into, tennis. It was a
Hmm.
way to kind of put some more eyes on maybe some of their other items that aren't maybe doing as well as they should be doing.
Hmm.
But for me, I'd like to see brands that are a little bit more luxury. I don't really think Boss is a luxury brand. I
Okay.
think Zeta is a luxury brand, Loro Piano, Brunello Cucinelli,
Hmm.
Tom Ford. I'd love to see Tom Ford, who loves tennis, get into some tennis clothing. I'd love to do a collaboration with Tom Ford, because I think a lot of these brands that got into tennis,
Hmm.
I don't think they really thought about, like we spent 5 years developing our short. I spent years and years trying to figure out what fabric. When I started the brand, I had a fabric. It was a stretch fabric. I had to put mesh under the arm and the back. Now the
Hmm.
whole thing is like a lightweight, airy PK, which serves really well. So I'm not sure that these brands have really they've rushed into it.
Hmm.
I think Wilson saw an opportunity from hard goods to get into clothing and align themselves with some of the Lululemon people. I think, and they're out there. They are every place. And
Hmm.
buy if you've got to buy our balls, you got to buy our rackets, you got to buy our strings, you got to buy our clothing too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's like I think a lot of it is like fake it till you make it, and
Mm.
I think you know people are saying to us like we're the new Lacoste, or someone's compared our brand to a running brand, which is Tracksmith, or a cycling brand, which is Rafa. And I think those brands have done a great, great, great job,
Hmm.
because that's really who they are. That's really what their ethos is. Our ethos is to make the highest quality tennis clothing and to make the best fitting stuff that doesn't go out of style. We're not in people's faces with a big logo. Boss is a big logo. Wilson's a big logo across it.
Mm-hmm.
We're more understated. I think, we're not going for that big, huge, wide audience that they're going for. We're
Mm-hmm.
going for what a Laura Piano or a Cuccinelli or Montclair. We're going for that sort of chic, sophisticated audience. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think we want to stay in our lane. We're not trying to compete. Lacoste, I would say, is probably the closest to what
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to do. But they're not making stuff, they're not making stuff in France. They're not making stuff in they're making stuff in Sri Lanka and Vietnam. We're making stuff in the U.S. And I think that's really important because the laborers that are working on our pieces are treated very well. Our stuff is just expensive. I keep on talking to our production guy. How can we lower our price? It's like, well, we can't. We just got to put a quality product out there, and
Mm-hmm.
people have to pay for quality. Things
Yeah.
that are going to last. We can wash our. Some of the players don't understand. Like, we're not Nike, we're not Adidas. We can't send you tons and tons of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But just wash our stuff, and it's not going to fade. It's not going to go out of style. It's not going to shrink. It's not going to lose its this or lose its that because it's quality.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell people to buy better, but buy less, but buy better. Buy fewer things. For me, it's all about a staple. I think most guys, what is your uniform? Like, a t-shirt, a pair of jeans, a pair of Birkenstocks, whatever it is, like, what's your uniform? And I think Uomo should be part of your uniform. Like, you don't have to wear the short, or, Energia short, or retro polo. You don't have to wear it just on the tennis court. You can wear it out and about, and you'll look great. I mean, you'll look chic. You look like people want. Obviously, I think you'll look amazing on a tennis court. I think what Brooksby wore in Houston, what he wore, I don't know why we didn't get even more attention. Or, I think the brand really, I think the polo, the monochromatic look, I think it really stood out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when Donna wore in Indian Wells, we got noticed by Tennis Channel as, who wore it best.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important to us. It's trying to put pieces out there that really fit you well, that really look, that really belong in that tournament.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to, we're respecting the tournament. I'm going to Rome for the Italian, for the BNL.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited to see, you're in Italy. And I think, I think with Patrick Montagla, who created his own tennis line now, he said it's almost disrespectful the way most American men wear their clothing. And the stuff just doesn't fit them right. It's very boxy. You go around Europe, you see people in France, you see people in Europe. It's like they dress with style. And I think it's important. I think it's important to go out there and really kind of, you don't have to wear expensive clothing, but just look like things fit you well, that pieces go with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's like who you are. If you care about how you look, how you carry yourself, you should, because that's the one thing you have control over. No one's going to tell you, listen, my wife will tell me, or my son will tell my wife, hey, you can't go out looking like that. Or I'll yell at my wife by some sweatpants that she wears. I just, she likes, they're comfortable. She just wants to be comfortable. But I think
that's the style now. It's athleisure. It's comfort over style. And I just became very self-conscious of my Nike crew neck and my Nike hat. I'm just but it makes sense because you're trying to make a statement without making a statement. And I think that's what fashion really is. And especially when you push the boundary of it. And when it comes to creating new colors and creating new styles, one thing that I learned in college or before college when I was looking at different areas to go through, I shadowed someone at a Saks Fifth Avenue, and they were talking about how fast fashion has kind of ruined the quality and having nice pieces for a longer period of time and having pieces that you can have, but then you can buy immediately again and again and again. Is there somewhat of I wouldn't say a fast fashion component to creating different styles for each Grand Slam, but how do you maintain the quality while still producing different colors and schemes every single couple months for a brand that is maybe smaller than a massive retailer like Adidas or a Nike?
Yeah, I think for us, it's a lot of, we use these Italian trims
Hmm.
and piping, different trims, different colors. Like we did something that Tennis Warehouse really liked, kind of a Wimbledon pullover with the Wimbledon colors on it. And that really kind of popped and sold out and did well for us. So I think, if you take certain colors and you kind of add the right classic trims that never go out of style, like you'll see on, people will put like a stripe on a Louis Vuitton bag or something of that nature. So I think it's just kind of adding a little something to something that's classic
Hmm.
and still maintaining a classic, but adding maybe an orange and a blue together,
Hmm.
or just different, just putting different colors that can be brought into, your main piece, which is, going to be, I've done a desert sand. I did,
Hmm.
like a lotus blue. I think that we're going to do some, kind of some, I like kind of a sky lighter blue. We might do something that way. We've
Hmm.
also tried some things that don't work and say, that just doesn't really work. We just pull back from it. So I never really want to put anything out there.
Hmm.
It just looks like it just doesn't really, it just seems like it's too much of a stretch. But I think
Gotcha.
a lot of brands were doing that stuff that just looked a little bit wild, like, oh, that's really ugly. And I think that's just a little bit too out there for sometimes.
Hmm.
I think this year Nike's. I like what Jack Draper was wearing. I think that was a good look. I think that people should pay attention at a big company like Nike to the clothing because they made some amazing stuff on Federer over the years, and
Hmm.
he did some capsule collections. So I like to think of things that we do as capsule collections, like making a certain dress. I took like a seersucker suit and
Hmm.
found this waffle fabric and kind of bringing that into some pieces on some long sleeve
Mm.
tops and different tops and made this kind of waffle top that I think you'll see on a few players, women mostly. But yeah, I think you mix in the fabrics, you mix in the trims, and you just try and keep it, you just try and keep it very classic. But I think you come up with different things every season, and I think it's mostly whether it's the main color or it's the piping or it's the trim. But I think it's better to keep it classic and simple and not go too far off from what we are.
Hmm.
It's like I like a lot of these swimwear companies that like Vilebrequin. They had a really nice swim company, and they do some really nice classic stuff. And Orla Bar Brown does this bulldog bathing suit. They do a really good job with. And I just don't. I think when some of these brands go too far out, I think people want the pieces in like the classic colors.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes it's just these brands are just trying to produce too many pieces
Hmm.
that are too far out there to kind of catch trends. And I think streetwear, in my opinion, when I was watching streetwear do its thing, kind of one-off pieces, like the company Kith does a lot of streetwear. I
Love
don't
their
understand why they're not. Yeah,
their
they should be picking up. Yeah, they do
they
a
did
great
their collab.
job.
They did their collab with Wilson two,
Yeah,
3 years ago, and I absolutely love that collection. I actually have their hoodie and I think the Wilson Kith tennis balls. Like that to me was
yes.
phenomenal in the way that you can make a simplistic piece that you could. And I absolutely love that collection. I actually still try to find pieces to buy from that collection.
No, listen, I love what they did with the New York Knicks with Kiff. That was super,
Yes.
super cool. Obviously, he's ahead of the curve, and you see a lot of these designers. Like honestly, they're designing interiors for Porsches and designing furniture. And think about Giorgio Armani. When Giorgio Armani, I actually interned on the movie American Gigolo. I put Giorgio Armani on the map, and like Giorgio Armani, he designs furniture, he designs sailboats.
Hmm.
It's just having an eye for design and classic stuff. And I think that Tom Ford is just unbelievable. I think Tom Ford, even like he got into furniture, his houses that he designs are just beautiful. They're one of a kind, special. They're art.
It's art.
So I think when you talk about brands like Boss or some of these other brands, I don't know the artistry, like Laura Piano. They have fabrics, that are just unbelievable, that are furniture fabrics. that are not just, beautiful shoes and pieces that are very expensive, very beautifully made, that you want to have one or two of their pieces if you can somehow afford to have them. But I like these. I like the smaller brands that just tend to do very cool things. I was in Copenhagen last summer, and I went into a couple stores, and some local stuff that's made in Copenhagen was just unbelievably cool. So yeah, I like these smaller brands, but I think these brands that kind of try to get into tennis from hard goods, they rush into it. I'm not so sure they think about it as they really thought about it as much as they thought about, the shoe or the strings or the rackets. Clothing is very complicated stuff. It's expensive. Working with the patterns and the designs, and we bring in some really interesting design people to work with us. I work with a woman in Italy. She designed for Spezi, Marni, Prada. She's the head of sustainability in all of Europe. There's a really talented woman that I work with in New York who helped us with some color blocking, and I want to work with her from time to time. She's incredibly talented. And I think, you just, with design and style, you like what you like. And I think for anybody, like when you talk about Kith, what excites you, I saw you light up, like you like what you like. And I think people like what they like. And I don't know, I think we're on to something. I think, there's a lot of room in today. But I think a lot of these brands, in my opinion, that became very successful, Alo Yoga, Lululemon, Beyond Yoga, in my opinion, you go in those stores and they're exactly the same. They blend into each other. And I think Uomo differentiates itself because it is timeless, classic, and it's not. We're not trying to be who they are, And they're wildly successful brands. But I think you feel our fabric and you feel our designs. Like, we have the best pleating guy, who's probably the most expensive person, but I would never have anyone else do pleats but this guy. Like, he's the best guy. And I know, like, you put our pleating next to, pleating from a mass-produced brand, maybe in tennis or something else, and it's just, or you feel that fabric, it makes me cringe, to be honest with you. It's just, it's not that good. It's just, it's not made to last. It's going to fall apart. It's not going to hold. It's not going to hold the creases. I don't know. I like,
You like what you like.
I like what I like. I like quality. I like things that are going to, going to hold up well.
Yeah.
We have a recycled drawstring cord. We have a gold tip on our stuff. It's very hard to put the tip on the cord. Very, very time consuming, very expensive to do. The piping, the tape, embroidery. We've embroidered logos.
Yeah.
We have woven labels. It's like each and every little detail, for me, it matters, It
does. But that's what makes brands, right? And that's what makes Uomo special, because if you didn't have all these finite details that you think are important, it doesn't make the product excel as much as you want, because like any product that's developed, you have to have your own kind of quality assurance with yourself. It's not just the quality assurance of the product, it's how do you feel about it. And that's one thing I think in society with what Steve Jobs did was he personally tested every iPhone. He personally tested everything to say, would I like this in a product? And if he did, it would go to production. If he didn't, they would redo it over and over and over again. So it's that kind of mentality that makes, at least from what I'm hearing, makes you enjoy the process of creating new products and new pieces for Uomo.
When someone walks out on a tennis court or goes out to work out, and I see them, I see the way it looks on them, I see the way it fits on them, I see the way they carry themselves in it, I see their confidence in themselves and in the product, and that's the best feedback. That's why people think, why am I at Indian Wells? Where I have other people on the floor that are probably much better salesmen than me. But to talk to customers and hear their feedback and see if something's fitting them right or not fitting them right and making the adjustments. Like if somebody's not working for something, I'm going to replace it right away.
Yeah.
Or if something is a little off, I want to make that customer happy. That's our number one goal, is to try and find something. If they don't like something, find something else, and hopefully they do like, not losing them as a customer, obviously. But it's I think to have a loyal, it's a slow build, this brand, but to have a loyal customer base, I think is really important. And I think that, listen, investors may not like, listen, we're trying to grow the brand. I'd like to put a substantial amount of funding behind the brand and really put it out there in a great way that it should be out there, where it belongs out there, where it stands out there. That's the goal of this next year to two. And, I hope we can meet that goal. And, we're just doing everything. This brand was honestly lifted up by friends, by people all the guys that played tennis, live ball tennis with us. They told their friends about the brand, and, what Tim Mudrick in Orange County, gave us all these great blasts, and just people all over. And what, how Pat talks about the brand, a travel friend of mine put me in touch with Burditch, how he loves the brand. And, listen, I wish I could write big checks to all of these people and say, hey, right now, if we are successful, yes, I'd like to take care of people. I had to literally bring in an investor for Jensen Brooksby because, he played Novak. He won the first set. We got 162 orders. Fortunately, I wish we keep getting orders now. But, Jensen did come on the scene very well, at a young age. Obviously he's coming back. He made a big statement with the autism thing, a whole other thing. I just think of him as a great tennis player and one of the great IQs on the tennis court.
Oh yeah,
definitely interesting, different type of player. What they're doing with all of that, is interesting. How we can be part of all of that, I'm not sure. He's a good kid, and I like that he's from California, and we kind of got behind him, and he kind of took a chance on us. We kind of took a chance on him, and listen, could another brand pay him more money? We have another 2 years on our contract with him. I don't know. I hope he likes the brand enough to stick with the brand. I don't know. It's a lot of agents in this sport are, I always believe that, if someone is successful for the brand, they should be rewarded.
Yes.
Opposed to, I don't think a lot of tennis players sell clothing very well. I think Roger Federer, did with the RF hat. I think that Bjorn Borg really did it. I don't think anybody beyond Bjorn Borg really sold tennis clothing. Tennis players are really out there on the tennis court. There are some that are entrepreneurial. I think have always remained very fashionable people. I think that, honestly, I really feel that, like Goran Ivanisevic, like he's a very stylish person. He wore Tacchini. I think players that actually cared about style, like we have a couple of players that they wore some pretty awful brands now that we're in Uomo. So I'm not sure that they really kind of understood, or maybe it was just an agent or it was a payday for them. I'd rather do well on your winnings and wear something that I feel good about and trying to take, because what are you going to get, $100,000 from a brand, or are people really buying a lot of this brand or that brand because this person's wearing it? I don't know. Are people buying Lotto because some of those players are wearing Lotto? I don't think so. Is it helping Lotto by paying some of these players? I'd rather insure these players and pay for their bonuses, and if they are successful for us in selling clothing, I'd rather, hey, here's a check. Like if Donna was selling more clothing, I'd say, Donna, hey, thank you. Here's a nice check. But, honestly, like there was an opportunity, truthfully, and I'll just say this to be very vocal about this. There was an opportunity at Wimbledon, which he did well. It was an opportunity at, the Olympics, which he did well, to talk about the brand. And I'm sorry to say it, that opportunity was lost. When a player can say for a minute, thank you to my sponsor, Uomo Sport, I love what I'm wearing, that's a really nice thing. To not say that, and to work as hard as we can, and to feel like it's, send me this, send me that, send me that. It's like, yeah, every now and then, give us a little, thank you, but I'm not sure that the mentality of a tennis player is that,
Yeah.
So I don't really blame them, but but the way, the way the Pepperdine guys are so incredibly supportive and great, the coaches, and it's not easy to translate tennis players and clothing. So,
Yeah.
we're
It,
doing our best. Yeah, if I had Yonex Sinner wearing the clothing, it would probably be amazing. I've had Vassetti wearing the clothing. I think it would be amazing. Just the way they carry themselves, the way they
yeah.
look.
It's
I,
it's the look, and for me too, and sorry to cut you off, but the
okay.
the idea that these players can have the opportunity to show off your brand versus just taking money for a paycheck, it's very different, and it comes down to a business and supporting, and there's a lot more factors that go into brands that, like, Uomo's a very special brand. And
Thank
while,
you.
like you said, like, as much as you want to give a check to these players, just showing support goes a longer way. Because and I want to ask you this too, was there the same kind of result on your website when Jensen won Houston this year, like he did versus Novak, or no?
Unfortunately, not. I think for a number of reasons. I don't think it was on when Novak was ESPN. And
Okay, got
ESPN
it.
obviously has a lot of viewers. I watched it on Tennis Channel myself on
Mhm.
the app, but I don't even think that I think they were airing other tournaments, not even the final. They weren't even airing the final of Francis Tiafoe, who's an amazing player,
Mhm.
or the match before Tommy Paul, who's an amazing player,
Yeah.
great athlete. And yeah, I don't know why that tournament didn't really which is beautiful. The crowds are there, but no, we got absolutely
Yeah.
zero sales from that great kit from
Mhm.
that tournament. I think
Yeah.
because it just didn't air. We were trying to do some ads,
Mhm.
and it just yeah. I think ESPN Tennis Channel really likes us a lot. They've really been very supportive of us there.
Mhm.
So all of them there have been unbelievably, like, they understand, and and they've gotten behind us in a big way. But yeah, I think that people weren't paying attention to that match the
Mhm.
way I would like them to pay attention to
Yeah.
that match, because obviously, it was an unbelievable to come from 2 years out and to play incredible tennis the way Jensen played. He was unbelievable. He was mentally so tough,
Mhm.
and he never gave up. He was never down. He was a tennis player that's never out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's tough to compete against for anybody,
Mhm.
and I think it was an unbelievable week for him. And yeah, it was our stuff on those clay courts in that beautiful setting. Yeah, it would have been great for it to have
Mhm.
been televised. Put it that way. So I don't blame anybody. I don't blame anybody. But yeah, we didn't get, like, I would have
Mhm.
loved I would have loved some more notice from that.
Absolutely. And Stephen, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. It's not every day we get to have someone of your caliber on the channel and the podcast to talk about such an incredible company that you have. Is there anything else? Is there any other socials besides your Instagram website that you would like to shout out or talk about before we leave you?
No, listen, that's great. I'd love for. I always think talking to people that are wearing the clothing, and really, because there's never an opportunity for them other than a podcast or something to really talk about, a little bit the clothing and how they prepare for a match and what they like to train in, what they like to play in, what they like to wear off court. I think that to talk to some of the people around the sport, the coaches, Pepperdine coaches are very supportive. I think some of the physio and some of the other coaches, we're going to get behind Ryan Redondo and
Hmm.
Bedell, and get Ryan in the clothing very soon, and Azuz Sam Leek, who's the physio for Andriva, who's with Kina. I'd love to get him, or I'd love to. It'd be great to get Milos or Pat or Thomas Burditch. Some of these really iconic people that are just so highly regarded, and
Hmm.
are doing so much for the sport. I mean, obviously Thomas is coaching the Czechoslovakian team. Pat's doing many great things. Milos is, you're going to be hearing a lot of very cool things that he's continuing to do, and
Hmm.
the world of tennis and finance and many things that he's such a smart, interesting guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to get some of these. I'd love to recommend some people if there's a right opportunity to come on your show, because I
Yeah.
think it's a I've listened to a lot of the interviews, and you just do amazing job. And you really take people behind the scenes and really take them into the sport that they would never necessarily really see about or really get to know or learn about, because that's more interesting than just watching a match.
Thank you.
Seeing what's behind the player, seeing what's behind the sport, seeing what's behind the brand, seeing what's behind the conditioning, the training, and what a whole year looks like. All that stuff is really interesting to me. So thank you for having me.
No, absolutely, Stephen. Thank you so much. And I can't wait to hopefully meet you in person one day. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. If you're listening to this on a podcast, make sure you're following the podcast, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Thanks again.